Morning, ladies and gentlemen, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm here today. My name is Belén Gallego, and I will be your moderator for today. We're here to discuss what are the opportunities for PV projects with storage in Australia. And with us today, we have two key experts in the region. We've got, on the one hand, Neil Brady from the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, who's going to be giving us the point of view of a financial institution that is looking into the region and is actively investing in the region. And we've got also with us Carlos Rodriguez from ATA Renewables. It's actually the technical side of the ATA group. And he's going to tell us, how he's moved into the region, how he perceives it, what are the opportunities, and as a technical advisor, where are the best areas for investment and for project development. This is part of a larger program called the Skill Development for Renewable Energy Professionals that you're all welcome to attend. Attending these webinars is absolutely free. We have a number of different skill set, know-how and experience that you can get from them. I'm not gonna keep going on for very long. We have to look forward to excellent presentations from these two professionals. But before we move on to the presentations, I'd just like to ask you guys a question. Let me put the poll on the, I would like to ask you, what could be the business models best suited for PV and storage projects in Australia? So it's very simple. I'd just like to know the opinion from the audience. How do you think that this technology can best develop in the area? I see that you guys are being shy. You're not really going for it. So please do go for it. I think the answers are very simple. A retailer PPA, state-based PPA. So in other words, the government is the one that puts a little bit of strength behind those programs. Corporate PPA, is that the way forward, or we can just go to the pool? Essentially, that will be enough. Please, I know there is a bunch of you. You're being really shy. Only a few have voted so far. I'd ask you if you can, please. I'm just going to give you 5 more seconds. I can see that not everyone has voted, but I just don't want to put this on forever, but please, just 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's see if we can get those last votes in. Okay, not everyone has voted, but anyway, let me just share. Okay, so what we have here is that the state-based PPA is the one that is the most successful. Unfortunately, not everyone has voted, but followed by the retailer PPA. So let me just share the results with you guys. And without further ado, Neil, can I ask you to please share your screen and also mute your microphone, and we can take it from there?
Sorry, guys, just 1 second.
Take your time, don't worry. Just remember, just go to, perfect.
Perfect.
If you just make that into large screen, we're ready.
Hi, guys. Thanks for getting up so early, a lot of you. But just to introduce myself, I'm Niall Brady. I'm an Associate Director of the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, and largely involved in the solar platform in our business. So just a bit of background on who the CEFC are. We were set up by the Australian government under an Act of Parliament with 10 billion of funding to invest in renewable energy, low emissions technology, and energy efficiency. We were set up under an Act, so we're a statutory corporation with an independent board. This gives us a lot of flexibility, and it means that we're not subject to what happens in government on a day-to-day basis. We have an Act, and we have an independent board who runs us in accordance with that Act. Our Act gives us some guidelines. We must invest in projects which are solely or mainly Australia-based, and we act as an investment fund. We don't make grants, but we do have the ability to offer concessional finance if we want to. So what we offer, we invest in both renewable energy, which is your straight down the line solar, wind, and battery. And then we also have a leg of our act that lets us invest in energy efficiency and low emissions technology, which helps us hit the wider economy where we see a carbon outcome. So we invest in property, infrastructure, even agriculture. We are flexible where we play in the capital structure. We can go anywhere from senior debt, mezz, into equity. And I suppose our role in the market and our flexibility lets us look at risks that the rest of the market may struggle with. So we can take technology risk. We can look at, say, merchant risk, which is a risk that a lot of the banking market struggles with. And we also have no restrictions from a capital point of view regarding tenor. I suppose bringing that a bit further, when we look at merchant risk, we've been taking merchant risk probably the last 3 years. When we started, the banking market wasn't really taking any merchant risk, and through crowding in, they now take limited merchant risk. So there is some progress on that side. I think if we move on, this just shows our breadth of investment and the sectors we operate in. And on this, there's a lot of cross-pollination. So large-scale solar are often dragged into a lot of the other sectors. So it crosses with manufacturing industry, local government, mining, property, as well as projects which go across large-scale solar, wind, and integrated battery. So I like this slide. It shows that we're growing very quickly. You'll see that we've doubled in size between 2016 and 2017, and I think this is largely driven by the market has really taken off in the last year, and you'll see in my next slide that the growth that has happened. We invest mainly in debt at the moment. We're about 90% debt. We like to think of ourselves as a catalyst to crowd in other financing. So for every $1 the CEFC has invested, we've leveraged $2 of private sector financing into projects. So here is solar in the last year. And as you can see, there's been an explosion. We have grown massively. I think the CEFC has been involved in 10 specific solar farms in the last year. And it's largely driven by the fall in costs in solar. I would expect that if we're here this time next year and looking at the same numbers, that it will be considerably higher than it is now. So just some examples of things we've been involved in. This is the Groot solar farm. This is an off-grid solar and storage project at a copper mine in Western Australia. The CFC provided 15 million of debt funding alongside an ARENA grant and equity which came from NAON. It's the largest off-grid solar and battery storage facility in Australia, and there's 10 megawatts of PV and 6 megawatts of battery. And the challenge in this was really integrating with the existing diesel storage, the existing diesel generation. So the site is totally off-grid, was fully, its electricity needs were fully met by diesel generation, and we have integrated a solar and battery solution. It's not easy. The integration has its own challenges, and the battery in this situation allows for the intermittent solar it allows the diesel to ramp on while the solar is ramping off. And for someone like a copper mine that requires energy security so they can keep operations moving at all times, very important. We see this as a real success story because this was NAON's first venture into batteries, and where we've moved now, NAON recently installed 100 megawatts of batteries in South Australia for the South Australian government at the Hornsdale wind farm. Another recent transaction we've completed is the Kennedy Energy Park. And this is Australia's first integrated wind, solar and battery solution. CEFC invested 94 million. There's 43 megawatts of wind, 15 megawatts of solar and 2 megawatts of battery. the battery is small, but it plays a very important role in providing grid security and stabilizing the grid. This is an area that, if you look at it on a map, is very far away, very remote in Australia. And Australia's generation tends to be clustered on the eastern seaboard, where this is fairly far inland. So the grid is pretty long and relatively weak. So then we move on to, that's the past, looking at new projects that may be coming. So with solar and battery, I think we'll see the same challenges in financing. The bankability will ultimately be driven by the mitigation of risk. So I won't go through them individually, but you can see Project A and Project B. Project A has largely mitigated its risks, where Project B brings a lot more risk to the table. If I work through the actual risk factors, I think that equity, technology, construction, O&M are risks that can be minimized and mitigated by the sponsor. The real challenge in the Australian market for solar, and the challenge going forward for solar and storage, will be that revenue model. And I'm about to talk about that a lot more in the next slide. So it's going to be the key challenge. So there's a number of revenue models that may be out there for batteries, but I think I agree with your earlier poll that probably the government PPA or the reseller PPA would be definitely the most investable solutions. There's a number of other things that may come. Time of day arbitrage, which is effectively looking at pool prices, picking up low prices during most likely the middle of the day, and then picking up the evening peaks. Brings a lot of problems with, well, one battery, it looks okay, but if it works so well and battery prices fall, well, does it work as well for 5 batteries? So it's very hard to take a long-term view on that, and I think we'll have a lot of financing problems to get that one up. The next is price insurance. You can sell a cap in the Australian market, and it's what a lot of the gas generators do. They'll sell caps that if the price goes over a certain level, they'll turn on their generator and be able to sell someone an insurance product on high prices. The problem with this again is that, well, your project doesn't start you don't get it installed for 6 months to a year, so you can't sell revenue for 6 months to a year, and then the actual long-term liquidity in that market is pretty poor. So you might get 3 years, maybe 4 years of time you can sell that cap. So it doesn't provide a revenue solution that can probably float a project with a lifetime of 10 years, or on a battery, or maybe solar with a 20-25 year lifetime. Then there's another couple of ancillary services markets out there. FCAS, which is frequency support. This is a market that's pretty light. It's pretty shallow, and it's very hard to tell what way it will be in the future. And then what we're coming into next is that the RET is probably largely finished, but where we're moving into is the NEG, the National Energy Guarantee. And this is the new revenue model which is being prosecuted by the current government. I can move on to our next slide with this, but where the NEG for solar and batteries, there's positives there. It has both an emissions intensity and a reliability target. So a solar and storage solution could hit both of those. The problem at the moment is there isn't much clarity on the NEG. We are probably looking at another 3 months of modeling before we start to get any feel for what the NEG is actually going to look like. And it's largely driven by how aggressive those emissions and reliability targets are. I suppose in the other opportunities, there's the opportunity to provide what we call a better kilowatt hour to customers. So what we're finding is a lot of customers are really struggling, like both retailers and behind the meter large energy users are struggling with the intermittency of solar. So through load shifting or base load solutions, you can use your battery to either shift the energy to a more useful time, for example, evening peak, or else provide a firmer solution to the end user. And next one, like the Groot project we just talked about, mining and heavy industry, Australia currently has very high energy costs, and they're seeking to use solar and storage to get reliable, lower price power. I think if we can get battery costs down a bit further, this is probably a growth area. And then there's emerging hedging and retailer models, which come into how the retailers are going to react. Is someone going to value a source of dispatchable power that they can run in and out of the market? So would a retailer write you a PPA to a solar and battery solution for with them to have the right to trade it? So I suppose what we've seen in debt and equity markets, I think back to my bankability slide, if you tick all the boxes on the bankable side, there's any amount of risk for equity and debt. But as we start to move down the risk scale, we get far less appetite. The market, there has definitely been a move recently towards accepting more merchant risk. I think if you look 3 years ago, the banking market probably wasn't accepting any merchant risks, and now there's definitely, each transaction I see has slightly more. I don't think we'll ever get to a situation where the banking market will be comfortable highly gearing fully merchant projects, but it's moving down the risk spectrum. I suppose what we see in banking markets is regarding tenor. The Australian banks are most comfortable at probably a 5-year tenor, while the European banks have been happier to go longer. There has been a bit of a move on that front this year as well, where the CEFC helped one of the domestic banks go to a 15-year tenor. The banking market at the moment, like most investors, is really struggling with what the national energy guarantee is going to look like. If you try and, without that much information, trying to forecast future merchant prices based on a national energy guarantee is very difficult. And I think that in Australia, most projects will have to look, even if you're contracted, generally there's a merchant tail risk. So equity really has to have a feel for what that revenue stream is going to look like in the longer term. That's it from me. Thank you. And we'll take questions later.
Thank you, Neil. Short, but to the point. I have a bunch of questions for you guys. Just once you stop sharing the screen and Carlos, you start sharing yours. Just a quick message for the audience. You guys can send questions through the Q&A box at the bottom. And also, we are recording this session. So we will send to you the recordings and also the presentations that you're seeing today in PDF so that you can download them. So can you stop sharing? It's at the top of the screen.
Sorry, yeah.
Don't worry, it's always tricky. Here you go.
Sorry, thank you.
Carlos?
So it's my turn.
You know, I'm truly astounded by how many people from many different countries. We've got a lot of Australians, of course, but we've got people from Egypt, from Pakistan, from Turkey, from Belgium, from Germany. So it's good to see, you know, how interesting to a lot of different people this specific technologies. I think you guys are being the sort of the leaders in this industry at the moment. Everybody's looking at Australia and trying to figure out what you know this means to them. So we'll talk about this a little bit later. Carlos, go ahead.
Great. So hello to everyone. It gives me pleasure on behalf of AT Renewables to welcome you into this webinar. We are an independent renewable energy group comprised of 4 companies providing services that span engineering, advisory, certification, and marketing intelligence. Please allow me just to give you a brief update concerning ATA Renewables in Australia. We are already based in this great country, and we will be opening our new office in Sydney in next February. We hope so. We have already worked in the Australian projects such as Moree, Royala, some projects for the ACT auctions, and we hope to continue this great relationship with the Australian renewable industry. So let's discuss some interesting points concerning the Australian market and the opportunities for PV projects, for PV plus storage projects in this country. As you may see, Australia has a great potential, as you may see in this in the left image, with an excellent level of solar radiation. Paradoxically, the zones with the highest level of radiation are also the zones where the grid is less developed. So the country offers interesting challenges and opportunities for new solutions. It's important to say that Australia is a country with a very developed mining industry. So there are a lot of mining operations in isolated locations that have been using diesel generations, and they are now looking for new solutions based on renewable energy and storage technology. So it's quite an opportunity for the storage system. In Australia, there are two main electric markets: the National Electric Market, also called NEM, and the Western Australia Energy Market, called WAM. As you may see on the image on your right, these two markets are not interconnected, but they are both operated by the Australian Energy Market Operator, called AEMO. The NEM works as a gross pool market, and the Australian Energy Market, the one works as a net pool market. So quite different options in the market. After this introduction of the Australian solar market, let's discuss the main phases for the development of PV projects in Australia. So, first of all, the selection of the project's location and land acquisition. Well, in Australia, this phase is similar to other countries, concerning solar resource analysis, topographic and geographic studies, environmental concerns, and grid connection access. So I won't go into detail about this phase. The following phase is more problematic and represents the main concerns of the PV developers in Australia. I'm talking about the management of permits and licenses. I will try to clarify a little bit the process. First of all, the negotiation for the grid connection. The developer must present a connection inquiry to the AEMO and also to the electric grid entity that is different for each region. When this inquiry is completed, the developer should present a connection application where he must discuss or show the technical and commercial aspect of the project, typically concerning the variable generation of energy and its impact on the grid. As a result of this discussion, the electric grid entity will make an offer to connect, and the connection agreement will be signed. This phase could be quite complex, so we recommend to develop close relationship and deep knowledge of all these regulation entities, and to use advisory services in order to avoid delays that can impact the project viability. It's also important to take into account that the social environment and the community around the locations is very important in Australia. Some projects have suffered difficulties because of the community opposition to this project, and they have had to look for another location. So it's a serious issue. At the end of this process, the developer will present the project to a public commission, and that there are also different public commissions depending on the region, and this commission will evaluate the whole project before giving the final approval. And we will move to the last phase that I will be commenting, is the financial close phase. The main financial model that has been based on retail PPAs that were promoted by the green certificate market, also a state-based PPA program, which results in feed-in tariff, or corporate PPAs. That's why we were asking this question to you guys. So very interesting answer. Concerning the stated basic PPA, there are currently 2 public auctions in the making: the Queensland auction of 400 megawatts and the Victoria auction of 650 megawatts. These auctions will have a very good impact on the project development, and actually the Victoria auction has reserved 100 of megawatts for storage solutions. So very interesting. Australia, regarding the financial issues, Australia counts with governmental entities that help renewable projects to be financed, such as ARENA or the Clean Energy Finance Corp, of course, as me already is here to explain. So the next phase, the construction phase, and so on, are very similar to the process in other countries. So I won't go into the detail neither. So let's talk about storage. Well, the Australian grid has suffered several problems of concern, and it has brought into question the grid stability. These issues will grow together with the renewable energy penetration, so a solution must be found. As a result of this concern, Australia is now looking into the storage technology with great interest. Several projects have been implemented, of which the Tesla project is the best well known, but there are other upcoming projects, such as the projects coming from the ACT auction, the Whyalla project promoted by CERN, or the announced project of ATL plant that intends to replace the Lidl coal plant with renewable energy and storage solutions. But there are different services that can be implemented by the storage technology. So it is very important and will be very important for future developers for a storage system to identify the needs of each region. Also, the AEMO and the Australian regulators will play an important role in the development of the storage technology in Australia, because they can drive the storage market in one sense or another, depending on their requirements. So we think that there are a place for everyone in Australia, but each region and each project will need some different services. So we think that it's very important for each developer to well know what its business is. And well, I want to end this presentation for my side, this webinar, with some records that have been broken in Australia in 2017 compared to recent years. So the first one will be fastest time to reach 1 gigawatt of commissioned solar in a calendar year. Also, record volume of solar commissioned in a calendar year, 1 gigawatt, more than 1 gigawatts. Record volume of PV rooftop commercial commissioned. I haven't mentioned it, but the rooftop and commercial scale industry could be very important, and it's very important in Australia, and could be a very another option for the storage system. And finally, the world's biggest lithium battery installed in record time, that is Tesla project. So thank you for your attention, and yeah, I think Belen have one question.
Yeah, don't take this slide off, because I'd like to ask some questions. You guys start sounding a little bit like Dubai, you know? There are always records for this, records for that. Record volume of solar commissioned in a calendar year, is that over China?
No, it's only compared to other years in Australia. So it shows a good tendency for the Australian market, but it's not compared to the global market. But however, are quite interesting records and shows that the positive tendency of the market that we hope it will continue.
You know, I've been working in solar since 2006, 2007, and every year it was like Australia. You know, the solar resource there is so good, but really, like it was like one step forward, two steps back, and it's good to see that we're finally in a situation where things are moving forward in the last couple of years or so. You can stop sharing now if you like, so that we can start chatting.
Okay.
And I've got a number of questions for you guys. The first one I think is going to be for Neil. This is my own question, and I'm going to try my very best, guys, to get to all of your questions also in the Q&A. But we have at least 15 minutes for questions, so we're good. But first, I wanted to ask, you know, you guys, Neil, you're leading the world in this sort of PV with batteries. You know, you have the largest project, you know, with the Tesla NeoM project. What are your lessons learned that you can maybe share with the rest of the world in terms of, you know, what to do, what not to do, you know, best practice, you know, where will you go wrong kind of thing. I know it's early days, but, you know, it would be good to hear because this is truly an area where you guys are leading at the moment.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, unfortunately, I didn't finance the Tesla battery. I would have loved to.
But even like that, I'm sure that, you know, some lessons are there in the...
So I really think we're going to start seeing lessons learned so far. What I'm really interested in is when they actually start operating in the grid, their effect, what they can do to the markets. I think if you look at Australia, what's going to be huge is last summer, we had blackouts in South Australia. This summer, we have a 100 megawatt battery, and this is all about energy security. And are we good? How the market is going to handle that as we start getting up? I think they're giving a 35-degree day tomorrow. So as we start getting up to the hot temperatures in December, January, February, how the batteries are going to manage that market and how South Australia is going to react, I think is going to be very interesting watching over the next while. I think from our experience in the CEFC and battery projects we've been involved in, if I take the GRUSA, the actual integration of 3 independent systems to provide energy security at a mine site, I think the actual integration was very much a learn by doing. There's issues there about making sure that all the systems are talking to each other properly and everything's working as it should.
Yeah, learn by doing. This is exactly what I'm getting at. But this is excellent. It's what we need. And let's see. I think in 6 months we should reconvene here and have Neo in here also, and they can explain, you know, how have things work. You know, it's interesting. Yesterday we held a webinar just about PV technology. Storage technology, and there was a lot of questions about this Tesla project, which obviously no one could answer because Tesla wasn't really on the webinar. And I'm not going to ask, you know, a competitor to weigh in on technical matters, but it's interesting how much, you know, speculation and opinions this project and this specific technology, the Tesla technology, is actually sort of bringing to mind. Okay, we've got a question that is quite technical. I wonder, you know, with each of you, or maybe Carlos, I don't know. Is it compulsory in Australia bonding the modules and structure to Earth, to Central Earth? I don't know. This is a very technical question. I don't know.
Oh, it's quite technical. I don't really know if it's compulsory, but
it is recommended. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. But however, it's a quite technical issue. I don't know if the rules go so far of the requirements, but quite interesting. I will research it.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I just wondered because it was so specific. There's also a very specific one for you, Neil. What is the smallest loan the CEFC would consider issuing on a low-risk, well-contracted solar power purchase agreement project with good counterparties? This sounds like a proposal to me.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you have a great project. And I think on that side, that's the type of project I think that the banking market would snap up. I think there'll be plenty of appetite, and it's not really the CFC's role to crowd out all the financing, but more to projects that might not be as bankable we deal in. So I think that's very bankable. I think on a minimum size for the CEFC, because we're limited by staff, I would say our minimum size is probably 30 million. But we have a number of aggregation partnerships with the other banks in Australia, which can do smaller loans.
So a question for you guys, and I'm going to go back to the questions here and people. I mean, I know we've talked mostly about lithium iron, really, but I mean, what storage projects would be really viable today that you would put your money into, Neil? Only lithium iron? Would you be looking? I mean, just within the range.
I think the other buzz storage product in Australia is probably pump storage. So that's probably where we're seeing a lot of interest. I know Arena have been studying a lot of feasibility, have been funding a lot of feasibility studies. That where lithium ion currently is in the cost curve, at scale, pump storage is probably more competitive. But lithium ion is moving very quickly.
Yeah, it will also. It depends also on the kind of services that you want to provide. So that could have an impact on your decision concerning the type of or the kind of storage solution. But we are still in the early days, and we'll see how it evolves.
Do you see the storage market in Australia particularly like led by, say, utilities, off-takers, by the grid managers, or by the actual project or IPPs themselves? Like I'm talking about a 3 to 5 year sort of, future, if you like.
Is that for me?
Yes, for both of you. I suppose you can start, Neil.
Oh, sorry. So if I look at it, I think largely reactive to the revenue model at the moment. So where you're seeing real competitive tension is South Australian tender. What we're seeing in Queensland, this is really, the revenue model is really driving people to start thinking about it. And then once there's a revenue source there, we're really seeing developers react to it.
Carlos?
I agree.
Okay, we have here one for you, Neil. It's quite long, so bear with me. It says, we're a PPA provider located in Canberra. Our model is great for customers which do not have or do not want to spend the initial capital to buy a solar PV system. We offer great savings compared to the grid electricity rate while receiving a good return on your investment. We're having trouble getting finance from the banks to expand our PPA capabilities. Would you have any suggestions for us, for a bank or organization interested in investing in a small-scale clean energy projects? I suppose this is a bit like the solar city model. This is what they're talking about. So any suggestions for a solar city type model?
So looking for a number of smaller projects, is that?
Yeah, our model is great for customers which do not have or do not want to spend initial capital to buy a solar PV system. Yeah, it doesn't say size, that's all it says.
Yeah.
We offer great savings compared to the grid. So I suppose it's a solar city situation where they pay for the system in advance and then you pay a PPA to them, or you sign a PPA with them rather than with the utility?
Yeah, it sounds like a long-term PPA type model. Yeah, look, we can look at that on an aggregation basis, or I'd like to see what response has been from the banks on that. Right,
okay. Well, Lucasena, that's the name of the person. Please get in touch with Neil and see, maybe, you can look into what could be done. There's another specific technical questions here. What is the best way to handle access standards during interconnection studies? Does additional storage make interconnection easier or faster? Or the processes? Do we know this?
I don't think that it will make easy or faster. I don't know what's your opinion, Niall.
I don't claim to be a technical expert on.
I don't think so. The best way of access to this knowledge, I think, is going to advisors, technical advisors that has this experience working with this standard and can provide you this knowledge. Also, as I said, having working on a relationship with the regulatory entities in order to know all the updates and all the requirement that they are creating for the Australian market.
Okay. I think I've gone through most of those questions, and they're very specific. So, luckily we have time. So I have two of my own, which I hope. One is then the question of CSP. I'm a super mega fan of CSP. Those that know me, and there's a bunch of people here in the audience, know that I've been working on CSP for a long time. I do not make difference between my children. I love all solar technologies, but CSP is close to my heart. And I know there's been a great announcement, a $6.1 PPA with Solar Reserve. It sounds like a very good, solution for Australia, because you guys have the second best DNI, or direct normal irradiation, in the world. These projects are like great dispatchable, plants, a bit like gas, but with the resource that you already got there. Do you guys expect these salt-based batteries, or because they have storage pretty much as long as you like, really, with molten salt? Do you expect any more of these projects going forward and happening? How do they compare with lithium-ion batteries? They seem to be pretty cheap, or pretty competitive, if you like. So I don't know, just your opinions on whether we'll see more of this, whether it makes sense to have more of this, etc. Neil,
I'll go first if you don't mind, Carlos. So I suppose I think I can see growth in it. If we look at, I think the Queensland government may have the Labour government won the election, and I think they announced that they have plans for more CSP in Queensland, maybe. So I think it will be things like that. I think at the moment, just sheer scale and initial capital cost is probably what's holding it back.
Yeah, I agree. Well, also other storage solutions have the advantage of being more sample and easy to construct.
Speak up for us, please, Carlos.
Yeah, I was saying just that other storage solutions have the advantage of being more easy to be implemented. So it's still early, I think, to compare them in Australia, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe it's a place for both solutions, for both technologies.
I'm surprised, that is more difficult, because it's like a dispatchable plant. It's a bit like having gas, but maybe the specifics or the specificity of the grid, or what is it that makes them more difficult to?
No, the construction of a CSP plant is normally more complex.
It's longer, yes,
than a PV plant with storage.
That's true. So the solution is not as, I suppose it takes a little bit more of thinking and, strategic alignment. Yeah. I can understand that. And I have one more question before we actually ask the audience another, and it's about this issue with business models. We're seeing a bunch of business models come up, but the one that is clear, and the one that it seems like in the millennial age we're seeing a lot, is the everything as a service, right? So we're talking about transport as a service. What about storage as a service? This is something that has come up yesterday in the webinar that we had, that EAS is looking at, testing different models, and perhaps offering a situation in which you, as an IPP or as a utility or as a grid customer, wherever, you rent the service rather than pay for it up front. So, after X years, when the cycle ends, they'll come replace your batteries. They look after, sort of the nitty-gritty difficult stuff. What is your opinion on this kind of storage as a service business models? Are they necessary at all? Would they make things faster, better, stronger? Would it make it easier on the side of the banks and the institutions to finance? And is it possible to see it in the next sort of 2-3 years? Neil?
Well, yeah. Would it make it easier? Possibly, yes. If you're just facing a payment for a service that you're sure of getting. I think really the question is, what's the regulatory change going to be that drives that? Why are people going to purchase that service? What need are they fixing? So I think we'll really need some movements in the regulatory market to figure out exactly what's going to happen there, because maybe the energy security target in the National Energy Guarantee, maybe that could drive a demand for storage.
Carlos, you have anything or any?
Yeah, I think that as storage becomes more and more important, we will see some new business model and different possibilities for the implementation of these storage technologies. But I will stick to the basis in this case and go for the typical business case business model for this technology. But why not? Why not? I think we will see a new business model for this storage solution. Maybe this is one of them. It's an upcoming world.
It really depends on the market, you know. Like, you know, we had this person here, Lucas Senna, that was asking about this solar city model, which she actually, or he, sorry, I'm not sure. Luca might be a man, actually, I'm not sure. But in either way, he did confirm, or she did confirm, that it was the solar city model. And that solar city model, it makes perfect sense, but really the only place where so far it's worked very well, very fast, you know, it's really the US, you know. Markets in Europe are way too protected by the government. So I suppose storage as a service is one of those where, you know, the same as with Uber, you can almost see, you know, in different cities, in different countries, whether it works or it doesn't. So I suppose it's changing the system, and the question is whether we're willing to see that change. And I'm going to take one last question from the audience. Neil, you get the longest questions I've ever seen in the Q&A box. But let's see. It says, this is Patrick from Energy Puzzle, and I have worked with both Frank and Mark S., which I assume are your colleagues, in the past. As far as an acceptance and funding of either solar, wind, and ES, certainly smoothing is important for the utility approval. But for finance, there is a need to quantify ancillary services, Swiss knife type of value. But these benefits need to be verifiable, quantifiable, and a benefit to properly finance. As a side, this really needs to be outside of arena funding. As far as mining, assuming diesel subsidies remain, megawatt hour price needs to be roughly 10 cents of a dollar or less, and needs to be, in most cases, to provide 24-hour service. Combination of renewables and storage and possible grid or generator connected. Yeah, I guess this is what he's trying to say. You know, you can do all of this, but it has to be under 10 cents of US dollar. Do you feel you can do this on a 10-year finance model? Yeah, this is. So the question is really, can we make this work in mining, considering that these guys don't like PPAs that go beyond 10 years? That's what.
Yeah, look, I will admit it's a real struggle. We're dealing with 25-year assets in the case of solar and wind. And it is a real struggle to get that payback at 10 cents in that time frame. What we are seeing, though, is massive cost reductions. And I think that's what we've seen in the last year, and hopefully what we'll continue to see. Is massive cost reductions can continue to drive that down. But yes, from a financial perspective, trying to fit a 25-year asset into a 10-year revenue model, which is then a stranded asset if your PPA is not renewed, is a very difficult ask.
You know, this is no different. I mean, the people in Chile are struggling with the exact same thing. And the side of CSP that deals with like industrial applications, it's the same again. People want to see like 5 years, 7 years, and unless you can fit that in that very short window, it's really hard to make it work. You can now sort of see this with PV projects, very specific PV projects, because the payback times are so short due to the product going down. But I suppose the good question here is whether we see, this is a question to both of you, the storage particularly side of things, or the exponential curve that is supposed to be followed by the storage markets and the battery markets in lithium ion. to be exponential enough to see this sort of price reduction over the next few years. And I'm not talking about very important electric vehicles, but the kind of batteries that we can use in our renewable energy assets. Do you see this price tumbling down as PV panels have, for example?
Well,
Carlos, do you want to go? Sorry.
No, go Nia, from
No. I'm happy to let you lead this one.
Oh God, I think I've tumbled into something.
I think that every technology will follow a similar curve of landing of prices, because when the investment came to a technology, normally its price goes down as the industry grows around this technology, and more options and solutions appears around the technologies. So yes, I think the prices will go down, but will the prices go down as far as for the PV models? I don't know. That's a good question. It will depend in how the investment and how the industry world reacts to the storage system.
Neil, did you want to weigh in?
I think all I can say on that one is I hope so. We've seen a massive fall in solar in the last year. Only this time last year we were relying on ARENA grants to get solar projects in Australia built. And we look at this year and there's 1.7 gigs in the ground. So, and there's a...
But let me tell you guys, solar PV has gone from, if you go back to what it was like in Spain in 2008, we were sort of at the beginning of the curve, we were paying 45 cents of euro, if you remember, as a tariff around the 2008 time, before, everything. And it now has 350 maybe gigawatts installed worldwide. And this has come down to about, say, 299, for the sake of argument, which is more or less what we're seeing in the Middle East. We could go to, but just to have an idea. So that's what the price has gone down very, very quickly. But then look at CSP. It's 5 gigawatts installed in the world. And we've gone from 26 cents of an euro and back in 2000 at the same time as this 45 cents in that tariff. And what I see now is around 7, 8 has been a little bit cheaper. For example, we just had recently in Chile a plant that was at 4.8, and that is just in 5 gigawatts. So I don't know, when you compare the steepness of the curve, you also have to compare, how much was installed and, how far have we come in terms of price reduction. We've got, anyway. I don't know. We have a comment here. I don't know if you've seen in the chat from Patrick. Neil, can you see it in the chat? It's more of a question of. He says it's more of a question of the price of real estate than the price of what. Yeah, I suppose we have to take into consideration the whole costs of the plant. But yeah, it's not. I suppose just looking at the technology is not enough. But it was just sort of the question that we followed. All right, before we said goodbye, anything that you guys want to add or some last thoughts or like messages for people who are listening?
I'm okay, just thanks for the opportunity to present and thanks everyone for joining in.
Yeah, thank you for your time. The Australian market is in a very exciting situation and we hope we have been useful for you guys.
So I think the Australian market is actually very, very exciting right now. I think everyone is looking in that direction. So we're expecting big things, guys. I hope you have a good break. I know you guys are going to break for a little while now, but hopefully we'll be able to catch up in 6 months or so and see how far we've come. And we'll be able to review a little bit what happened to the Tesla project that I think everybody's looking at. So thank you for your time, Neil. It's been really a pleasure to get to know a little bit more about what's going on in the Australian market with you guys. Carlos, thank you very much for your time too. Have a good break. And also to all of the attendees, thank you for your time and see you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.